So, hello friends, welcome to your channel Manage Better. On this channel, we are trying to bring to you knowledge, skills, and practices that help you get better every day, every week, every year. In general, there are three aspects of learning something new, at least from my point of view: the why, the what, and the how. Why is about the purpose, what is about the landscape, and how is about the method. I usually focus on the why and what on this channel. And my belief is that how is a personal discovery? You can find your how if you're clear about your why and what. And I'm here to share a summary of one of my favorite business books, The Discipline of Getting Things Done by Ram Charan and Larry Bossidy. At the time of its writing, Larry was, of course, at that time chairman and CEO of Honeywell, and Ram Charan, a famous management thinker and advisor. This book first came out in 2002, almost 20 years ago, and was an instant bestseller. I like this book not because it was an instant bestseller, of course, but more because it addresses a core issue of execution. I have always addressed each situation from a how will we do it approach. Often in meetings, I have found myself thinking, all this is fine, but how will we do it? And this is an execution mindset that I have evolved and developed over the years. Of course, I know the limitation of this mindset that there is an over reliance on execution and under investment in strategic thinking, which I am very conscious about and I try and overcome. Our execution is a strength for me, and I've always been very, very interested in anything that helps you get better in that space. And this book certainly did. So let's get into a summary of this book. This book is much more than just what the execution topic suggests. It's almost like how to get things done in a large organization. So, the book is in three parts. The first one is, of course, the need. The second is around building blocks. The third is around core processes. And relate to this approach really well: the why, what, and how of everything we are doing. Why is the need? What are the building blocks? And how are the core processes? So, this book really aligns very well with how my thinking has also shaped over the years. And I'm very excited to bring a summary to you. It's one of the rare books which are timeless. I often say that you can't judge a book by its cover, but in this case, you can. And read the title and byline: Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done. Right? So it is a discipline. It's almost like a subject of its own, and it gets things done. Now, the first part: why is execution necessary? Before that, the deeper question is, why doesn't everyone else get it? Right? So simple answer is, it is not sexy enough. It is not easy to sell these kind of books or to sell these kind of courses focusing on execution compared to, let's say, something like leadership or strategic thinking. Everybody wants to be a leader. Everybody wants to be a strategic thinker and doesn't realize that at the end of the day, you have to get things done to be effective in either of those categories, right? So, writing a book like Execution was unlikely to be successful. Yet, Ramcharan and Larry Bossidy wrote it because they realized that there was this gap that people are ignoring execution compared to plan and planning. A lot of B schools, business schools, focus only on the plan and the planning. Right? It is as if it will magically result into an outcome. It doesn't. Right? That's where this book comes in. And it is surprising that 20 years hence, there hasn't been any as deep as this on this topic. This is the timeless nature of this book that includes the wisdom of Ramcharan and Larry Bossidy. It basically is 40, 50 years of wisdom already, and it is still a worthy read. So I would strongly recommend that you read this, but never share with you some key summary points. Execution. So for a while, there was hope that when the leading business excellence models were including execution as a key component and even giving it more weightage than strategic planning, but that movement also stagnated. So in a way, there was no torchbearer for execution for many years. And, like I keep saying, things don't happen magically. They take time and effort. They take persistence, grit, gore, blood, sweat, everything. Both the authors have said, more time and scholarship are given to strategic thinking and management techniques. Neither mean much to a company. However, if its leader cannot take an idea and make it a reality. So if the execution does not happen, all the planning and management technique and everything comes to zero, not right. So that's the value of this kind of work. Think about what you're doing now, a program, a project. How much of it was strategic thinking and how much of it is grind? The blood, the sweat, the sheer execution, as I call it, the grit, the perseverance needed to get things done, get things over the line. That's what this book talks about. And that's what has always been my interest area. To say that I don't believe in strategic planning, of course I do, believe that, unless there is a whole mechanism of getting things done, the plan is not successful. And that's where most people drop the ball. So, book, of course, talks about this gap, like in planning and execution. And, if you look around, you will find that all leaders are brilliant at execution. They land stuff, right? And you can see who's landing stuff merely by looking around. You will know that these people always get the work done. And there are some people who make fantastic, wonderful presentations, but can't land that stuff, right? There is value in those people in those presentations because they are thinkers and they are useful in the plan. To expect them to land everything that they said is probably unfair as well. Right? I give this example a lot of times, and those who know me may have heard this from me. Almost everybody knows what Toyota does. Dozens of books, maybe hundreds. Almost everybody now knows what Tesla does. Almost everybody knows how Disney operates. Why can't we replicate? It comes down to execution. How these companies are able to execute the simple plans that they have, nobody else is able to match. Or it takes a long time to get there. And by the time people get there, these companies have moved forward. Right? Three key points from this section. Execution is a discipline. Things don't happen magically. Something has to be done. And that was point one. Point two is execution is something that all great leaders do. Look around. Anybody who has left a legacy would have got things done. The third point in this execution should be core to the culture of the organization. So that was part one, why execution is needed. Now coming to part two. Part two is about the what. Right? You remember I spoke to you about why, what, and how. So part two is what is to be done. There are three building blocks that the authors have suggested in the book. Firstly, there are 7 behaviors, and there is a framework around how things happen. And there is that one job that no leader should delegate. And what are these 7 essential behaviors according to Ramcharan and Larry Bossidy? First, number one, know your people and your business. There is no substitute to this. Stay close to people that are running your business, that are helping you run the business. Don't rely on what is told to you because it is filtered and there can be biases. Knowing how the business runs and makes money, more superpower. Not as simple as that, you sell something, there's some cost and this minus this is profit, it's more complex than that. Point number two, or behavior number two, insist on realism. Be real, be authentic. This is the heart of execution and it follows from knowing your people and business, which was point number one. Not letting problems and mistakes surface is a certain way to not let things happen. It's a very anti-execution behavior. Behavior number three, set clear goals and priorities. Have you seen leaders say, I have 10 top priorities? Really? 10 top priorities? If you have 10 top priorities, you need to relook at definition of top and priorities. Execution-minded leaders always focus on few priorities, and the authors suggest that no more than 3 or 4. A smaller number is easier to focus, better to remember, and certainly a higher chances of getting it done. Fourth, behavior. Follow through. And everyone underestimates this behavior. No one just does anything because you wanted them to do it. Right? They wait for you to be serious. Are you serious about it? Will you ask again? Is it important enough to you? If it is important, magically things will happen. And how do you demonstrate it is important? By following through, by asking for it. Now, some leaders, of course, think of this as that I told you once and it never got done, that kind of thing. That doesn't happen in organizations. People are listening to you, but they are also listening to your seriousness about that topic. For example, one of my best execution experiences in my career was when head of operations announced that we will have only one goal this year, 15% improvement in productivity. Only one goal. Everything else has to align. And he was persistent around. Initially, we all thought that he will move on. This is, he may have attended a seminar or a workshop and he's talking like this. Week after week, he persisted, did not change his point of view. Guess what? In about 3 to 4 weeks, everybody fell in line. We started looking at how to get this 15% done, and magic happened. The goal was set for a year. We achieved it in 6 months. And this is one of my favorite stories when it comes to focus and follow through. Behavior number 5, reward the doers. Favorite topic of mine. And it is a very, very fair thing to do. Rewarding equally is not useful if you want a execution culture. In fact, if you want any useful culture, right? A smile and a pat on the back is not enough. If you want something to do something really useful for the company, you have to show the goal at the end of the goal, right? Many cultures can call this manipulative and could be socialistic point of views that, everybody's working hard, they should get the same benefits. Working hard is never enough reason for things to happen. Some people make things happen even without working hard, and they do deserve the rewards at the end of the day. So behavior number 6 now, expand people's capabilities, develop people. That is your only hope for longevity in the organization. Share your experience about getting things done, expand how people think and operate. And this will not happen in a classroom. A leader must also be a teacher. And finally, behavior number 7, right? Know yourself. This perhaps is the most critical behavior of the 7. Self-awareness is, I always say self-awareness is a huge superpower. It allows you to streamline and amplify your actions and messages to ensure goals are met. If you are not honest with yourself, you won't have the credibility to get people to work for you. People work for the purpose, yes, but they also work for you. There are some qualities that the authors have suggested, like authenticity, self-awareness, self-mastery, and humility. Now, moving on to building block number 2, create the framework for cultural change. You can't fix culture after it's broken. My words, not the authors. Culture evolves and it is organic. You don't fix it, you create it. Now, how do you create a culture for execution? Firstly, look around. Are you creating a culture for execution? Do you see people focused on getting things done? Culture is extremely difficult to work on if we don't understand what is. It is perhaps the sum of shared values, beliefs, and the ways of working, and much more. All of this combines to make a culture. We can't define it, but we know when it is not there. Right? When we know it is not conducive to execution. Ever heard this sentence? So no one ever gets anything done here. That's absence of a culture of execution. Now, changing culture is, of course, a very complex thing, and it is not a session where I can go into deep in that. And I may not be qualified also. But the authors have proposed focusing on changing beliefs and influencing behaviors. Right? So beliefs influence your behaviors, and if you change beliefs, likelihood is that the behavior will change. Behaviors and beliefs are interrelated. Behavior is what people do, and this delivers the results that we get. If a leader rewards and promotes the people for execution, the team and company culture will change very quickly. You must reward not simply for achievement of numbers, but also for the right behavior. And speaking candidly is extremely important in execution culture. Right? It is an enabler. But if you speak candidly, you must also be ready to listen openly as well, right? Which is a skill that many leaders miss out on. Everybody loves speaking candidly, but can you listen candidly? Are you open to that? So with that, building block number 3, right? Remember, this is we were done with the why of the book, and we are now in the what of the book, and have the right people in the right place. Remember, when I introduced this, I said that there is one task that the leader cannot delegate. I did not use this phrase, have the right people in the right place. I said one task that the leader cannot delegate. This is that one task that the leader cannot or should not delegate. And everybody who manages people should be very mindful of finding the right people for the right job. People get things done. People are a mix of their values, beliefs, skills, judgment, enterprise, capabilities, and a lot more. They bring all of this to work, and it's all a package deal. Now, all this is known, right? What is also often heard is that people are our most important asset. We call people asset, but we sometimes forget, who are these people? What are they bringing to the job? Are they right fit to the job? And so on, right? Don't give very deep thought of who's fitting the job. And the right people, of course, elevate the job to use their skills. And after they leave their job, we do realize what an impact these people made. Right? The authors talk of some key reasons and why leaders are unable to select the right people for the right job. First one is lack of knowledge. Now, don't look at appraisals only, right? That was based on a performance against a previous job, or performance against another job is unlikely to give you very deep insights into what the person can do in another job. What will it take to succeed in this new role? Use that. Second is lack of courage. Look around and you will find that a lot of cases where people either get to a job or continue in a job because the manager did not have the courage to bite the bullet. Everybody knows, including the manager, that these people will not work out, yet the manager does not bite the bullet. So that is lack of courage. The third is the psychological comfort factor. This is about selecting the people you like or are comfortable with. Now, don't get me wrong, the authors also don't suggest that, comfort is not important. Of course, it is important. You work with a certain set of people, that's important. Should it be the primary criteria? I have a short story to share here. Jack Welch is considered one of the best business leaders of all time. But who selected him and why? Reginald Jones was the CEO of General Electric GE for more than 10 years before Welch came in or came in as a CEO. And Reginald Jones was very famous as an intellectual, calm, composed person and very dignified and, cerebral kind of a personality. And he selected a vibrant, sharp, often acidic, complete antithesis personality of himself in Jack Welch as the next CEO. Had he gone for a similar person or a comfortable, psychological, comfortable person, what would we have got? Right? This single act makes Reginald Jones a higher leader than everybody else, especially when you think of who Jack Welch selected as the CEO. That was part two, the building blocks. There are three core processes: the people process, the strategy process, and the operations process. While these processes are interconnected, they are also sometimes independent. But tighter the integration between these three processes, the better the execution culture. What is the people process? People process connects strategy and operation. If you don't get this right, the other two won't matter. An effective people process looks at evaluating people accurately and in depth, identifying and developing the next layer of leadership, and filling the leadership pipeline to build a succession plan. And all this has basically four blocks. I'm trying to simplify the chapters in the book. Linkage of people to strategy and operations, development of the leadership pipeline, which is second, dealing with non-performers, extremely important, and linking human resource to business results. Now, if people are not aligned to strategy and operations and milestones, none of this matters. Execution is all about getting things done. There may be some sporadic success, but it will not endure. Ensuring the right quality and quantity of people to deliver a strategy is a key people process. And taking tough and unpopular but inherently fair decisions is critical. Sometimes you have to deliver bad news to good people. And if you fail in this, you will fail in most acts of leadership. Additionally, developing a leadership pipeline ensures that the organization strategy will be executed over a longer period of time. Now, we should be able to consistently and continually assess stability of our people and promotions and rotation. The authors also propose a retention risk analysis and a succession depth analysis. More about that in the book, of course, you should read it. I'm just sharing the key points. Right? Other key aspect is dealing with non-performance. Like everyone will be a good performer all the time, right? It may be also a fitment issue. The second process is the strategy process. Now, while the premise of the book is that execution is more important than strategy, it does not ignore strategy. Of course, you have to have a good plan to be able to execute it, right? If you don't have the right strategy and go after relentless execution, you might land where you didn't want to. So the assumption is that the strategy is right or is meaningful. And for the strategy process is not about just the planning, but also the plan for executing it. I spent quite a few years studying and implementing the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award criteria of the US. And several questions pushed one to think deeper into that the plan to execute the plan is also part of the plan. You can't leave the plan hanging at the end without an execution plan. Right. That's the power of the strategy process. So strategy should be accompanied by an execution plan. Strong plan should address some key issues. There are quite a few in the book, but I will just share a few. What is the assessment of the external environment? How well do you understand existing customers and markets? What is your best way to grow the business profitability? Who's the competition? And so on. Right. You will notice that quite a few companies miss this. Large corporations sometimes are challenged by startups. Another aspect is, can the business execute the strategy? Right? You may have a fantastic strategy, but can you execute this? Is it possible? Is it feasible? Are there short-term and long-term goals that are balanced? Having too many long-term goals, but hardly anything in short-term doesn't make sense because you won't have the momentum. Having everything short-term but not long-term enough, again, doesn't make sense, right? Another area where I see, plans fall, and earlier in my career, I've helped quite a few companies, complete a strategic planning workshop, is that, people are extremely rigid about the plan that they have. My view is that your planning process should be rigid or at least consistent, but the plan itself should be flexible. Right? Moving on, a couple of more points to note here in the strategy process. What are the critical issues facing the business? How will the business make money on a sustainable basis? Now, strategy, of course, helps the company become clear about where it makes money and how it makes money, and of course, now and future. Understanding what your key drivers are, what pricing model you will follow, and so on. So that was the second process, which is the strategy process. So the first was people, the second was the strategy process. The operations process. This is my favorite process because, like I said earlier in the video, that I am very biased about execution. I do believe that putting plans and execution mechanisms is as important as people, strategy, process, everything else. People process helps leader identify who will develop and execute the strategy, and the strategy process helps you develop the strategy and execution plan. The operations process gets all this done. Right? This breaks the longer term goals into smaller doable target and helps the organization deliver on the target. Plans for design, development, sales, production, marketing, everything else. Right? We all know this, but we often fail, and the authors of this book keep reminding us of first principles, that go back to first principles. Leaders are often not familiar with the processes at the ground level and then make unrealistic assumptions and demand. This is not very good for execution, and this was one of the behaviors also, the second behavior about being realistic. Or authors argue that the value of a good dialogue is priceless. Now, too much time is sometimes invested in charts and numbers and frameworks and fancy diagrams, that but not enough candid and sound dialogue. Right? And a good dialogue, candid dialogue, filter, no holds barred kind of a dialogue could actually make a huge difference. And this book was written 20 years ago, and I have already told you that it probably includes wisdom of the two authors from 30 years before that. So the wisdom is timeless. Not much has changed. Even today, we find that the value of a good dialogue is priceless. This completes my quick summary of one of my favorite books. Maybe number one, actually, Execution by Ramcharan. In summary, execution is perhaps as important, if not more, than planning. It surely needs your attention. It is the discipline that gets things done. I urge you to read this book for a deeper understanding. This summary by no means does any justice to the wisdom of this book. I thought that, maybe some of you would get interested after listening to this. So till the next episode, manage better. Thank you.